Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Sweat Simple podcast. My name is Brooks Herbis, and I'm an online fitness, nutrition, and mindset coach who's here to help you simplify and make sense out of the all too confusing fitness and nutrition industry. Let's be real, there's a lot of conflicting information online, and it can be hard to know what's legit and who to trust. In every episode, I'll be sharing the science and psychology behind health, fitness, and long-lasting behavior change. But I'll also be sharing real-life practical application because all of the best info in the world only matters if you can actually apply it to your real life. So grab a coffee, water, glass of wine, or lace up your walking shoes, and let's dive in. Hello, you guys. Welcome back to the Sweat Simple podcast. I woke up to a ton of snow that I was not expecting here in Denver. I knew it was going to snow. I just didn't know that it was an actual legit snowstorm. So as a result, I am working in full cozy mode today. I've got my blanket on while I record this podcast. I'm in sweatpants because I feel like when it's snowy out, especially this early in November, we just need to bring the cozy vibes. But super excited for today's episode because we are talking all about how to eat mindfully. And I was really inspired to make this podcast episode because it seems like everyone keeps talking about mindful eating, eating mindful portions, being mindful over the weekends, but we don't really have clear definition as to what that actually means. And recently, I'm putting in quotes, being mindful has kind of been giving me the vibes that balance, also in quotations, gave me like a few years back, meaning that it has good intentions. Like when we say we're being mindful or I'm eating balanced, we have good intentions. Like it really means that we're trying to find this like ever elusive balance between enjoying foods that we like in moderation and not having guilt around it and really like enjoying our life but also still making progress towards our goals. And I really love that intention, but mindful and balance, it's actually just a really vague term that doesn't really mean very much, which is an issue. Because if you're someone who finds yourself feeling really frustrated because you keep saying, you keep going into the weekend being like, I'm going to eat mindfully, I'm going to have a mindful portion, but then you never seem to actually follow through. That's what this podcast episode is really going to help, because the issue right now is how you're looking at quote unquote mindful portions, and you're probably using it too vaguely. Mindful eating, eating mindfully, that is an actual strategy that's going to help you hit your goals long term. But the way most of us are using it right now is too vague. It's actually just a really good scapegoat. Think about like how easy it is to say you hit your goals on Monday morning because your only goal over the weekend was to be mindful. And having a mindful portion could mean having 2 slices of pizza, or it might mean having 5. Like there's no definition around mindful. There's no definition around what it means to be mindful. So it's really just an easy way to say, yep, check the box, I was successful, without actually making any progress. And if you're okay with that, like if you keep going into the weekend saying you're going to be mindful, you're going to have mindful portions, and you're really happy with how your weekends have been going, and you're really happy with the progress that you've been making, then amazing. You might not even need this podcast episode. Like if you're feeling really good and you feel like you are eating mindfully, then this isn't something that we really need to change. However, if you're not feeling that way and you're someone who keeps saying that you're going to be mindful, or another one I love is give yourself grace or have a mindful portion size, but then you're really frustrated because you're not making progress towards your goals. You're really frustrated because you're not getting any further along when it comes to your fitness journey, or maybe you're not even following through on that mindful goal you set out, then it's time to change how we look at mindful eating. The good news is that there is a way to actually eat mindfully. And in fact, it's a really useful skill. Mindful eating is a very important part of long-term sustainable fatness. I have long-term sustainable fat loss. I truly help all of my clients eat more mindfully because if you want to lose fat and you want to keep it off long term and you're not just interested in a quick 30-day diet, we need to learn mindful eating skills. Now, this day and age, it is really any day and age, it is not enough to just track calories and macros. That mindset of I'm only going to hit my calories, I'm only doing this to hit my macros, that really leads to you just checking a box. What you learned through just tracking calories, just tracking macros is how to manipulate your food choices to hit numbers, which is really helpful when you're trying to hit those numbers, but it's not really helpful if eventually you want to stop tracking, which is the goal for me with all of my one-on-one coaching clients. We use, and not even all my clients track, but when my clients who do track, we use it as an educational tool to start learning a little bit more about proper portion sizes and the foods you're already eating. But the end goal is to not track long-term. Even especially when you're in maintenance, we should not be tracking calories. The goal is eventually to get enough education that you're moving away from that. But if you don't have any of these mindful eating practices in place, when you stop tracking calories, you're going to feel like you're floundering. Because if you were only focused on hitting numbers, checking that off your box, manipulating your food to ensure that you're hitting specific macros, if that's all you focused on, you're going to feel like you're really struggling when you stop tracking that. Like if you haven't learned things like how to stop eating when you're full, how to leave food on your plate, what a proper portion size looks like for you, how to get back in touch with those hunger and fullness cues, then you're going to have a really hard time maintaining your progress when you're no longer tracking calories. Like I said, calorie tracking gives you great education. I am a huge fan of it, but learning mindful eating skills alongside counting calories is what's going to help you gain the skills to maintain your results long term. So in order to truly eat mindfully, we really need to adjust our definition of what that is, because what mindful eating is not is a scapegoat. We need to get out of the habit of using mindful eating as a way to be really vague and a way of saying we're being balanced. We need to stop using mindful eating as a way to really give us an out and allow us to never really hold ourselves to a really specific high standard, because that can be scary sometimes. I get it. It can be scary to set that goal for yourself, because what if you don't follow through? However, setting these really vague goals and just continuing to say that you'll be mindful, it's not setting you up for long-term success. So what I want you to start thinking about mindful eating as truly is a practice of being present and aware of your food, your feelings, and your body when you're eating. Mindful eating is not another way of saying balanced. It is not a way of limiting portion size. It is not a way of not, holding yourself to like a really high standard. What mindful eating truly is at its core is just getting present and being aware when you're eating. And because of that, mindful eating can help you get back in touch with your hunger cues, which is frankly something that many of us lose because of the things that we learned growing up. How many of you, raise your hand, I'm raising my hand, were part of the Clean Plate Club growing up? In order to have the dessert or in order to get up off the table, you had to finish everything on your plate, or you had to finish all of your vegetables, like whatever it was. That really gets you away from listening to your hunger and fullness cues, because you get into the habit of, I need to finish my plate. You can also eliminate your hunger and fullness cues from years of dieting. If you've only ever been focused on hitting WW points, hitting calories, hitting macros, and you've never stopped to pause and think, am I actually hungry? Is this food keeping me full? Those years of dieting, those years of only focusing on hitting numbers, that can make it really hard to be in touch with our hunger and fullness cues, which is what we want to start doing again with mindful eating. In addition to that, mindful eating can also help you to stop mindless snacking and just become more aware and more intentional about your food choices. Instead of your brain constantly being on autopilot and you're just immediately going to the bag of chips when you feel stress or emotions or whatever it might be, mindful eating, like I said, helps you be a little bit more present and a little bit more intentional with our food choices, which again, when we're talking about long-term sustainable fat loss, these are the habits that we really want to start practicing. We don't only want to focus on hitting calories. We don't only want to focus on hitting macros. We really want to think about what are the things that we need to do? How do we need to change our relationship around food so that all of this starts to feel a lot easier long term? And mindful eating is one of those things. Now, before we dive into some tips and strategies for how to actually eat mindfully, I do want to let you guys know that if this is a skill you're interested in learning more about or you want help with, keep your eyes peeled for Holiday Hustle. Over the course of 4 weeks, you're going to learn how to eat more mindfully, how to stay consistent, and how to enjoy the holidays without it feeling so hard and like so much of your focus is on food. That's going to be released in a couple weeks for Black Friday. And like I said, mindful eating is a big component of the Holiday Hustle. So if this is something you're interested in, shoot me a DM. We can chat about it a little bit more, but it will be officially launching in a few weeks. All right, back to the nitty gritty tips and tricks. So we are not looking at mindful eating as balance and small portion sizes. So what are we doing? How do we start to eat more mindfully? A few things that are going to help is number one, pausing halfway through your meal to assess your hunger levels. Physically put your fork down when you've eaten about half the food on your plate. And this is really helpful, especially if you're at a restaurant where portion sizes tend to be a little bit bigger. Take that pause and check in. Are you still hungry? If you're not, maybe you ask for a to-go box. If you are, eat a little bit more and then take that pause again. How are you feeling now? Are you starting to feel more full? If you kept eating, would you get to that point of feeling overly full? Do you like that feeling? Are you okay with feeling overly full? Do you want to stop now when you're feeling content? Just take that pause. And eventually, by taking this pause, you're going to start to notice these feelings on your own. But if you've been conditioned to just eat everything on your plate, we need to be intentional about making that pause happen until it becomes second nature. Right along with that is to put your fork down in between bites. This is again forcing you to slow down, to get more present, to be more intentional with how much you're eating. We really just want to slow down the entire process of eating so that we have more of a chance to check in with ourselves, to check in with our hunger cues, to really understand if we're still feeling hungry or if we're getting to that point of feeling full. Something else that can help is limiting your screen time when you're eating. Again, all of these practices are about being more present, bringing more awareness, getting more intentional about the meal itself. Do you need to be mindlessly scrolling when you're eating and then you finish your meal and you didn't even taste anything? You didn't even feel satisfied after because you weren't even present while you were eating. You haven't even registered that you finished your meal. Eliminate the screens. You're going to be able to be a lot more intentional. The last thing I want you guys to keep in mind is thinking about how you want to feel after a meal. So again, going back to that feeling of being overly full, eating too much, eating to that point of being uncomfortable. Do you like that feeling? If you don't like that feeling, when would you need to stop eating in order to not have that feeling? Are there certain foods that make you feel full and energized? Are there certain foods that make you feel lethargic after? Really think about not just, can I eat this food, can I not? Start to think about, how do you want to feel after the meal? How much would you need to eat and what sort of things would you order or have in order to get that feeling? Now, those are just 4 tiny tips that are just barely scratching the surface. Mindful eating, especially when many of us have been deconditioned when it comes to leaving food on our plate, enjoying things in moderation, listening to our hunger and fullness cues, it takes a lot of time to really ingrain this in our day to day. And it can take a lot of time to really make this feel, normal for you, honestly. So these are strategies to help get you started. These are strategies that can help you eat more mindfully. But know that it's probably going to take a little bit more time. And if you do want more help, definitely recommend joining my holiday hustle to help you focus on this with some of those more indulgent meals, like, all of the holiday meals we have coming up. But the biggest thing I want you to take away from this podcast is, even if you don't have these, strategies in place, even if you aren't quite ready to start focusing on mindful eating, remember that mindful eating isn't another term for balance. It's not a way for you to let yourself off the hook or to continue, with the restriction. It's not a way to refer to this really vague no goal area when it comes to the weekends and eating a certain food. Mindful eating is a practice. Mindful eating is a tool to help you get more intentional and more aware while you're eating. So if you take nothing else away from this podcast, please stop going into the weekends saying that you're going to be mindful if you're not meaning that you want to be more present and more aware. Stop letting yourself off the hook if you really want to make more progress in your health and fitness journey. Give yourself the opportunity to define how you want to approach the weekend or a certain meal. And it's okay if that includes mindful eating practices, but don't use mindful as another term for balance, because truly you are doing yourself a disservice. Mindful eating is a way to develop skills so that you can maintain healthy habits long term. Now, I hope this episode was helpful. I hope it was a big aha mindset shift moment for you and you're feeling a lot more inspired and motivated as to how to handle the weekends. As always, if you guys have any question about this episode, please shoot me a DM on Instagram. I always like to hear from you guys and help you understand these concepts that are a little bit more nuanced than things that we talk about on social media. So if you have any questions, shoot me a DM. Otherwise, I can't wait to hear from you guys, and I will talk to you next week.